Hey math class, so we are starting our next chapter of math. So this chapter is all about data and gathering data and analyzing it and representing it. And so we're going to start off with line plots, which you're familiar with from our previous chapter. We'll move into coordinate grids, so thinking about plotting ordered pairs on a coordinate grid. And then we'll move into line plots. From there, we'll be thinking about data sets using tables and finding patterns in data sets. And we're going to use all of those skills all together. So looking at the three different types of graphs, using tables and finding patterns in order to really analyze data sets more closely and more in depth than we've been able to in previous chapters. So this is actually one of my favorite lessons or favorite chapters. It's really fun. We're going to be finding a lot of data sets that are in your own homes and using that data to analyze and graph in our chapter. So today we're starting with line plots, okay? And line plots are, where you've got those little X's, and I'll show you a little bit more about that as we continue our lesson for today. So this data set is about thinking about how much liquid is left over in glasses at the end of dinner each night. So I measured how much liquid is left at the end of my glass at the end of dinner every night, and I came up with this data set. So on the first night, there was a quarter of a cup of liquid, the second night, a quarter of a cup of liquid, the third night, a half cup of liquid, and so on and so forth. You get the idea. So the first thing that I want to do before I jump right in to actually building my line plot, I want to make a tally chart just so I can make sure that my chart will be accurate. Now, a couple things that I want to remind you of here when we did this last time, some of us, when we were tallying our data, went out of order. It really makes sense to go in the order of your data. So, for example, I don't want to go half cup, fourth cup, 3/4 cup, because that's not in order, right? From largest to smallest or smallest to largest, right? So I'm going to start with my smallest measurement, which is 1/4 of a cup. My next measurement, looking at my data, is 1/2 of a cup, and my final measurement is 3/4 of a cup. If I had more measures here, then I would include all of them, but I would be making sure that I was going in the numeric order from least to greatest, so that when I go to plot on my line plot, my data is in order, okay? So now I'm going to go through my data, and I'm going to count how many times 1/4 cup is in my data. So let's see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I just kind of crossed off my numbers as I was going, just to make sure I didn't accidentally forget something or count something twice. So I've got 1/4 cup. Now let's go ahead and count 1/2 cup. So I've got 1 and 2, it looks like. So I'll make 2 tallies here. And then our last section is 3/4 cup. So I've got 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, 3. So I've got 3 tallies for 3/4 of a cup. All right, now we're going to take this data and we are going to turn it into a line plot. For a line plot, obviously, you start with a line on the bottom. So I'll come over here and I'm going to draw my line plot. Now, it's super important that we're labeling our line plots, right? Not only are we labeling it with the scale that we're measuring, our scale are our numbers, right? So 1/4, because that's my smallest. Then I have 1/2, that's in the middle. And then 3/4. So notice I'm not going out of order. I'm staying in numerical order. I cannot just write these numbers in whatever order I want. I need to go in order so that my scale makes sense, right? My scale, just like on a ruler, it's moving up right now, right? From 1/4 to 1/2 to 3/4. Now I also need to make sure I title this line plot, and I will title it water left over, because that's what I'm measuring, right? Water left over in glasses, and I'm measuring it in cups. So left over water, and then I'll put my units in cups. So now I've got my title of my line plot. I've got my scale marked very clearly, and now I'm going to actually put my tallies on here, my marks, right? So I know for 1/4 of a cup, I've got 7. So that means I'm going to put 7 vertical marks in the 1/4 category. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In my half cup section, I should have 2, so I'll put 2 marks, 1, 2. And in my 3/4 marks, I've got 3, so 1, 2, 3. All right, my line plot is done, but like I told you, we're gonna take this a little bit further, and we're gonna be thinking about some questions that we can answer based off of this line plot. So I'll show you the questions now. We have 3 questions we're gonna look at. The first question is, what is the average of this data set? So what is my average amount of water left over? My second question is, what is the combined measure of all of the glasses with 1/4 cup? And lastly, what is the combined liquid volume of all of the glasses? So let's work through these questions slowly. Let's start with the average, right? How do we find the average? Well, if we can take all of our data and divide it by the total number of data points that we have, so in this case we have 12 data points, then we can find that average. So what we're noticing is we have 7 1/4 cups, right? So we have 7 times 1/4. We've got 2 1/2 cups, so 2 times 1/2. And we've got 3 3/4 cups, so 3 times 3/4. Now, my friends, we're using whole numbers and fractions and multiplying them together. So see why it's so important to know how to do this? So now we can multiply across. We know that 7 is also, we could also write that as 7/1 because fractions are division problems, and 7 divided by 1 is 7. So if I multiply across, 7 times 1 is 7, 1 times 4 is 4. If I simplify that, I know 4 can go into 7 one time with 3 left over, so I get 1 3/4 cups. I can do the same thing for 2 times 1/2. 2 is equivalent to 2/1, so 2 times 1 is 2, and 1 times 2 is 2. Or you could have thought, Ms. Sharma, I know if I have a half cup and a half cup, now I got a whole cup, right? So you might have thought that as well, and that's great if you did. That's 1 whole cup. And then same thing for our last problem. 3 times 3 is 9. 1 times 4 is 4. 4 goes into 9 2 times with 1/4 left over, so I have 2 and 1/4. So now I've got all of these values, but I still don't have a total number of cups. So now I need to add these all together. So if I do that, I have 2 and 1/4 plus 1 3/4 plus 1. And you might notice, 1/4 and 3/4, that's a whole, right? So then if I add my whole numbers, that's 3. So 3 plus 1 plus 1. So that's a total of 5 cups, right? So our total number of liquid in all of these glasses is 5 cups. We actually answered one of the questions before we even got to it, right? But we're going to use that to find the average. Now I need to take that 5 cups and I need to divide that by the total number of data points that we have. We can find that by counting our X's, by counting our tallies, or by counting our data pieces. We'll get the same number each time. Let's count those X's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We find that we have 12 data points. So I take 5 divided by 12, and what we know is fractions are division problems, right? So this is 5/12 cup. So the average is 5/12 cup. Now we've got one final, so I'll write that over here, 5/12 cups. We've got one final question. What is the combined measure of all glasses with 1/4 cup? So I want to know, out of this 1/4 cup, what's the total amount of liquid volume we have that had cups that were filled 1/4 with 1/4 cup of liquid? And we already figured that out, right? If we go over here, we had 7 instances of 1/4 cup. We multiplied 7 times 1/4 and we got 1 3/4 cups. So our answer to this problem is 1 3/4 cups. Remembering that fractions are division problems, right, my friends? So if When we're finding the average, don't forget that if this is fractional data, your average will be fractional too, probably. So keep in mind that main concept that fractions are division problems. You are going to be trying out this data, finding a data set, making a t-chart, and then a line plot, all on your own today, and then you'll be answering some of these questions as well. So I can't wait to see your hard work. Good luck.